Though considered by most just another classic American history story, the assassination of Abraham Lincoln was one of the most exciting and interesting stories ever. From the background of the main characters in the days leading up to the assassination itself and the chase of the assassins, it changed America forever. Okay, so first, for us to understand how this happened, we have to understand the main characters in this plot. So first of all, the most important man, John Wilkes Booth. He was born on May 10, 1838 in Bel Air, Maryland. He grew up in a very famous acting family. His dad was very successful, and his brother, which he actually had 10 siblings. One of his brothers, Julius, became a very famous actor and was very renowned throughout the world, as you can see there. And there's where they lived in Bel Air, Maryland. He also felt a lot of pressure from his family to live up to their big hype, as they were obviously very famous throughout the whole world, not just America. So while his family actually ended up favoring the North, he actually, since he traveled around the U.S. a lot, he actually became more Southern favored and eventually became very die-hard in the Southern favor. He was not alone in this conspiracy. He had many helpers, and they are Michael O. Lawton, former Florida infantryman that was looking for some excitement, and Samuel Arnold, who was a friend of John at St. Timothy Hall Boys School when they were children. John Surratt Jr., who was a Secret Service agent for the South, and was also, his mother was the one who owned the boarding house where many of the meetings were held. And then you have George Surratt, who was a Prussian immigrant that came to the U.S. and was just kind of a rough-looking kind of guy that just did tons of different stuff. Then you have Lewis Powell, who was a very successful man and was a very avid outdoorsman and hunter, and really just joined for some excitement. And then last we have David Harold, who was a very, no, I had that backwards. This is David Harold. That's Lewis Powell, or Lewis Payne, he's also known as. He was a very big, over 6 foot, athletic, strong man that was kind of a threat to a lot of people back then. So next we're going to talk about kind of why these guys joined, because why would they, it seems kind of silly why they do this, but obviously they all enjoy loving and all favor the South, and also just to be with John Wilkes Booth, since he was such a famous person at that time for his acting career, was just the reason why a lot of them joined. Another reason may have been because at first the plan was not to kill Abraham Lincoln, but just to kidnap him. So that was not as bad as a threat, obviously, so they may have joined because of that. Next we're going to talk about the events leading up to the assassination, including Abraham Lincoln himself. John Wilkes Booth was kind of an odd man. I would almost say kind of possessed. I mean, he enjoyed the idea of kidnapping or killing Abraham Lincoln. He was kind of a devious man. When he heard that General Lee surrendered to end the Civil War, he was furious. He went to a bar and after he got drunk, he started throwing stuff all over the room and was very mad about it. He did not like Abraham Lincoln at all. He thought he was a tyrant. So that was very interesting. Also, he and Lewis Powell were actually at this speech shown here, which Abraham Lincoln obviously spoke, and they were pretty close to him, Abraham Lincoln himself, and John said later that he could have shot Abraham Lincoln right there if he had wanted to, but they decided not to. Let's talk about a famous dream of Abraham Lincoln's that he had 3 or 4 days before the assassination. The dream was where he had been gone from some kind of trip, and then he returned home and he found out that the president had been assassinated, and he looked in the coffin and it was him in the coffin, so that was kind of strange. Other things we need to look into is why did the Lincolns even go to the Ford's Theater that night, and how did John Wilkes Booth even find out? Well, one of the main reasons is because the Civil War just ended, and Mary Lincoln, President Lincoln's wife, had always been kind of a stressed lady and been stressed a lot. So after the Civil War, they just kind of wanted a break. And one of her favorite things was to go to the theater. And it was the last showing of her favorite play, Our American Cousin, which was a British comedy at that time. So it was a chance for her to go. And then, so John Wilkes Booth, as he was picking up his mail, which was very close to Ford's Theater, he actually overheard the manager and some of the staff talking, because obviously they wanted to get the word out that the president was coming so they could have better ticket sales. So he actually overheard them talk about that, and he went into immediate action. He immediately called a meeting with the only three of his co-conspirators that were in Washington, D.C. at that time, George Atzerodt, Lewis Powell, and David Harold, and at the Kirkwood Hotel, which actually where George Atzerodt was staying at that time. So he decided that they would have Lewis Powell and David Harold attempt to kill Secretary of State William H. Stewart, who was a very big favor. He loved Abraham Lincoln. He was a big supporter of what Lincoln did. And then they decided that they would have George Atzerodt attempt to kill Vice President Andrew Johnson, who would obviously be the next one in line. They also wanted to get rid of. And obviously, John Wilkes Booth would save the best for himself, trying to kill the president. So, so that day for John Wilkes Booth was kind of a hectic one. At around 2 p.m., he went to Ford Theater, which is shown here, and here it is, present day. As they went there, he went there to scope out, see what he had done. He had performed there before, so he knew the layout, but he wanted to make sure he had it perfectly so he would not mess up. And he actually went to the presidential box, and behind it, he actually carved a hole in the door so he could see through. So we don't really know why he did that, but obviously it would help him with his attempt. Also during that day, many of his friends and family, or just people that saw him that day, thought something was wrong. They saw that he was anxious and that he was nervous, but they didn't really know why. So he was obviously not. It was obviously a big time for him, and maybe if those people would have found out, the president may have not been assassinated, and life would have changed. So.